Hey guys, welcome to Baby Sleep Magic Podcast. My name is Chantal, and today's episode is actually a recording that I've previously done in regards to early rising. And look, this is a subject that comes up all the time. I get loads of DMs on this, whether it's with my own clients, whether it's with people from the community inside the Baby Sleep Magic app. It's such a common scenario. I've actually previously done one podcast and video on this topic, but I've actually, in this particular podcast that you're about to listen to, I've actually gone into a lot more detail on what to do at that 4-5 a.m. mark. So I hope you find it helpful, and if you do find it helpful, please feel free to share it with another mum or a friend, and thanks again for listening. Hey guys, today's video I'm going to talk a little bit about early rising. Now, I have previously done quite a detailed early rising video which touches on the room environment and timings and naps and layers of clothing and all that kind of stuff, which has previously been done. And I think that video goes for anywhere between 8 to 10 minutes. So it's quite a detailed video. This video in particular is going to be on early rising, but I'm going to talk particularly about what to do when your baby wakes anytime probably after 4 a.m. Because what I tend to find happens quite a lot, whether it's with my own clients or DMs or, even through the community in the app, they don't know what to do at that 4-5 a.m. Bubby's awake, they're full of beans, they're ready to start their day, but it's too early to start your day, so what do you do? So look, my advice in situations like this is to treat it as a night waking. Pretend it's midnight. If you're not prepared to start your day at 4, 4:30 or 5, don't start their day at 4, 4:30 or 5. It's too early. My advice here is, like I said, pretend it's midnight, because babies don't know what the time is, or toddlers. They don't know what the time is. What they're doing is they're going off their own body clock. And if you're feeding them, getting them up reluctantly, bringing them out, giving them milk, a bottle, boob, whatever it might be, and feeding them at, even if it's 5 o'clock or 5:15, every day they're going to start waking up between 5 and 5:15 because they're genuinely hungry. And they're ready to start their day because that's what you've implemented. And what you've got to do is break that association. The best way to break that association is to stall and leave them in the cot as long as possible. This is the absolute key to success. But I totally get the fact that if they're up from 4 or 4:30 or even 5, getting them till 6 or your designated wake up time, and ideally, realistically, is around 6 for anyone who's wondering. But again, that's your decision and you've got to make that call. But let's just say in this scenario, it's 6 a.m. Getting a baby or a toddler to stay in their cot or their room till 6 a.m. if they've woken up at 4:45 is near on impossible. And I get that. So what we're going to do, like I said, is treat it as a night waking. In some cases, you may need to give a little bit of milk. Again, I'm not a huge advocate for feeding when unnecessary, not at all. And especially if you've already weaned off night feeding, you don't want to be introducing it again at this point. But what you may want to try is offer a little bit of a sippy cup of water, and you may need to, encourage them to go back to sleep, whether that's patting the mattress or whether that's checking in on them or whether that's stalling completely. Because in a lot of cases, babies, once they see you from that 4:35 a.m. in the morning, they see you come and see you go, they will crack it because they are wanting to start their day. They want to get up and they're ready to get up and they want to start. And especially if that's what they're expecting and that's what's happened in the past, they're going to continue to do that. So in a lot of cases, you might be best to just stall and do nothing at all. But again, that's only going to last so long. As an overview, what you're likely to experience, let's say Bub wakes up at 4:30. What you might do, you might get them through till 4:45, relatively fuss-free. They might wake up, they might babble, they might chit-chat, they might play with their comforter, they might rumble around, and then that whinge starts to turn into a bit of a cry, and then you're at 4:45. Now, at 4:45, you can make a decision on what you decide to do, depending on how old Bub is and if you've previously been feeding during the night or not. Now, if you are feeding Bub through the night because that's what they still require, at this point, you may want to offer a feed. Now, if you're offering a feed at this time of the morning, my number one tip is to not offer too much of a feed, because they're ideally going to wake up for the day between 6 and 7 and eat breakfast or have a big feed of milk, and they're not going to be that interested in feeding or eating if they're having a big feed at 4 or 5 in the morning. So we want to offer them a bit of milk to take the edge off and get them back to sleep. That's the key. We don't want them to think that they can wake up and party at this time. So if you need to, offer them a brief feed. Now that might be a few minutes on the breast, and I'm talking a few, like 3 or 4, or 40 mils of milk in a bottle. That's it. We don't want to offer them too much that they're full and just go to sleep for 3 or 4 hours. We don't want that. We just want to take the edge off and try and get them back to sleep. And you may need to encourage them back to sleep. There's nothing wrong with offering a little bit of hands-on settling or shushing from a distance or patting the mattress if you need to, because once we start breaking that association, they can then start to get back on track. And, consistency is the absolute key here when it comes to early rising, because early rising is by far the longest habit to break and change. But it is possible. It 100% is, and everything is fixable, but it comes down to how you manage it and consistency and persistency along the way. Summer is always a little bit more challenging because it gets lighter a lot earlier. So having a dark room is absolute imperative when it comes to trying to string out, that early morning wake up. So particularly for summer, once you've offered that little brief feed and you're trying to get Bub back to sleep, look, at the end of the day, if Bub then is refusing and not going back to sleep, which is somewhat expected for the first few times, guaranteed, they're not just going to get that brief feed and go back to sleep because I said treat it as a night waking and that's what they're going to do. They're not. They're going to push up against a wall and they're going to push back because that's just what they do, and that's typical behavior. So in that scenario, what you're best to do is stall, like I said, keep them in the cot as long as possible. Now, what you're likely to experience at this point is, you've gotten yourself to 4:45 at this point. You've offered them a feed. It's now 10 to 5, 5 to 5. At this point, you pop them back down and they're not going back to sleep at all. They're now having a good old play. They're having a chit chat. They might even be having a bit of a whinge and grizzle. Now, at this point, once that whinge and grizzle reaches a cry, again, what you don't want to do is get them up and get them out and take them out and cut your losses. You don't want to do that. You want to try and keep them in that room as long as possible. But what you don't want to do is have them in that room crying for an extra 20, 30, 40 minutes. It's just not going to, that's not fair. It's not fair on them and it's not fair on you. And it's the last way you want to start your day. So when Bub gets to a point where they've reached that moment and they're really cranky, now what we do is stall with a toy. And that toy can be anything. But it needs to be somewhat special. But when I say special, it needs to be a little bit exciting. It needs to have some like bells and whistles on it. It needs to have some maybe lights on it. It needs to be something different that they don't see every day. There's a few things out there that's like a little hippo where you press a button and it projects stars on the roof in the dark. Use something like that, because when you take this toy in and you put it in their cot, what you want them to do is be so distracted and so distracted with what you're putting in their cot that they don't even care that you've been and you've gone. Because like I said earlier, if Bub sees you come and go and there's nothing else for them to look at, they will crack it and you're just not going to get any further. But if you've managed to pop this toy in and now you've bought time, because at the end of the day, what we're doing, they're not going to go back to sleep. That's not going to happen straight away. You don't want to get up either because it's, you're setting this scene that you don't want to set. But equally, you don't want to leave them in there crying either, because that's the end of the world and it's the worst way to start your day. So we use this toy to our advantage temporarily. Pop the toy in, go back to your room, bed, whatever you're going to do, whether you get up, have a shower, get yourself ready, coffee, whatever, while Bub is still in their room. And now you've bought time. Now this toy might buy you 15, 20 minutes, give or take, if you're lucky. But now we've brought it down to 5:20, hopefully. So at 5:20, what's likely to happen is Bub is going to crack it. He's over the toy, he's thrown it out, or he's pushed it away, he's standing up, or he's really, really ramped it up, and he's cranky. Bub wants to get out. Now at this point, get Bub up. Get Bub up, start your day, bring him out to the lounge room. But my number one tip here is don't feed Bub until after your designated wake up time. So in this scenario, it's 6 o'clock. So get yourself to 6:01 and then give Bub either the milk or breakfast that they need at that point. So again, there's no point leaving them in there from 20 past 5 to 6 o'clock, just crying and escalating and screaming. It's just not fair. That's not the way, you don't want to start your day. So get Bub up, bring them out and play with them. Distract them with toys, give them something to play with, keep them busy. And then when that time has come where it's their wake up, where it's your desired wake up time, that's when you offer them the first meal or feed of the day. And with that approach and with that method, with time, consistency and practice, they will learn to sleep in longer. Because what they're not going to start doing at 4:30 or 5 in the morning is waking up, waiting 15, 20 minutes for a toy to stay awake. Like, it's just not worth it. And then, you know, what they're not doing, they're not waking up at 5 or 5:15 or even 5:30 early because they're not genuinely hungry. This is the key to success with the early rising and getting them as close as you can to 6 o'clock. So not every day is going to be the same. It's really not. Babies' days will fluctuate all the time, as you know. But if you can use that as a bit of a template and as a bit of a base and as a bit of a strategy to work on how to, you know, get as close as you can to your desired wake up time, it's going to give you the best possible opportunity to do that. Inside the app, inside the early rising resource, I do have an example of what type of toy that I recommend and what I was trying to explain earlier. So there is an example in there that you can go to and have a look at what I'm on about. But again, it doesn't have to be that I've suggested. It could be anything that ideally, like I said, something that they haven't used or seen or played with for a very long time or ever before, because you just want it to work to your advantage. When you take that in, you want them to go, wow, and be excited and play. And at the end of the day, as long as they're in their dark room, they're still resting. That's where their wake up time still can be when you get them out of their room, whether that's 6 o'clock or whether it's at 5:45. You know, until that time where they actually come out, they're still resting. So it all counts as downtime. You know, we can't force them to close their eyes and go back to sleep at, 5 o'clock in the morning, but we can insist on keeping them in their room as long as possible in the dark, because all that at the end of the day counts as downtime. So when you do bring them out around 6-ish, then you can try to start your day off on some type of structure for the day. And then you can obviously work your naps from then, not from when they open their eyes at, 4:45 or 5, more like, 5:45, even 6 o'clock when they actually come out of their room, and you can start their day from there. And obviously this is for babies over the age of, 4 months minimum, but certainly for babies over the age of 4 to 6 months and upwards, this technique works absolutely amazing. But again, it comes down to persistency and consistency with this method, because once it's implemented and you're on the right track, it might take anywhere from a couple of weeks to a couple of months to really get Bub's body clock back on track. But it does work and you will get there. But like I said, I've got more information on tips for early rising in a previous video that I've done, which breaks down everything else when it comes to early rising, like I said earlier. So look, I hope these tips help.